You have come across a brand new true crime podcast. Oh my goodness, Sato. Thank you. Yes. I have 4 cats and 2 dogs, so if they interrupt us, I'm sure you won't mind seeing them. Anyway, you've come across a brand new true crime podcast, Burger's Bubbles, named after one of my cats. He's a long haired black cat. His name is Burger. I would show you, but he's not in here right now. I will show him to you. And we call it Burger's Bubbles because I always say that Burger has nothing but bubbles in his head. But if I love to explore the minds and the crimes of humans that deviate from the norm. And if you like that too, join me for these stories and let's hang out. I would also love your help. If I mess up any of the facts or like the little details, please let me know and I will fix it. I am I love accuracy in my facts. I'm a data analyst, so every detail is important. I do want to warn you ahead of time that this story is going to contain CSA, SA, brute violence, and ultimately murder. So if that's not for you, that's okay. But there will be a lot of this in this podcast, just so you know. In the 1970s, there were multiple active serial killers. Charles Manson and 3 of his followers were found guilty of the murders of Tate, the LaBiancas, and 4 others on January 25th, 1971. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, would go down as one of America's most, or the United States more specifically, most notorious serial killers. The killing spree of Son of Sam in New York was publicized around the world. That's not normal for that time period, so it went viral basically. From October 1977 to February 1978, the bodies of 10 women were found in a hilly area above the city. There were no leads. The media began to attribute the victims to the hillside stranglers. And the co-ed killer, Ed Kemper, he was around. And the one we're going to cover in this first episode of this season of Burgers Bubbles, the man who should have enticed the most fear of them all. Because he came off as normal. Like, you look at him and you think, that guy's fine. He was the least suspicious. Ted Bundy. It was a few days before Thanksgiving. All of the families in America, or most of them probably, were planning meals and travel for the holiday, unaware that an actual demon was being born. It was Sunday, November 24th, a baby boomer born in the year of the dog as a Sagittarius. They named him Theodore Robert Cowell. He lived for 42 years and was executed on January 24th, 1989. During the 1970s, society was haunted by various human-shaped monsters. And while we were busy trying to shield our teenagers from doing drugs and smoking cigarettes, not me because I wasn't alive yet, but the decade was marred with shocking crimes. That was Sato. A murder trial began to be broadcast live for the first time, where we could consume true crime from our homes. That was unheard of. The grim details were gruesomely exciting, and it was I can almost hear my grandmother exclaiming, "Why are they showing that to the world? We don't need to see that." But I can guarantee she wouldn't miss a moment of it in between her home shopping network marathons. I miss her every day. Ted Bundy appeared normal from the outside and was considered conventionally attractive. He was a law student that held a double life. This first part, we're going to go over a brief intro to the case because it's a long case. He had a long-term girlfriend who had a daughter. And on his dark side, he assaulted, essayed, and murdered women that looked like that girlfriend. Ted would pretend to be injured or hurt on crutches, or he would cosplay as a police officer to give the women a sense of security, like they were in the presence of an authority figure. But he was good at it. He was charming. He could talk a woman into doing what he wanted because of his appearance, and he was smooth with it. He would then get her to where his car was and kind of away from the crowd, lure her in. Despite spending over 10 years denying his crimes, he was responsible for the abduction, assault, and murder of numerous young women and girls. Bundy finally admitted to killing 30 individuals, though the actual number of his victims is believed to be over 100. He emerged as a suspect in an increasing number of unsolved murders across 7 states. This guy was on it, and he loved to drive. While confronting murder charges in Colorado, Bundy orchestrated two notable escapes. So funny, too. But he was recaptured in 1978 for the murders committed in Florida. He was sentenced to death 3 times over 2 trials. But he was ultimately executed in the electric chair at Florida State Penitentiary on January 24th, 1989. Even tragic stories have a deceptive beginning. So here's the beginning of his story. There was a young boy who took great pride in his title as the ultimate frog catcher. He believed he had a special talent to spot those gleaming, bulging eyes above the murky, dark waters. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946, to Eleanor Lois Cowell at the Lindhun Home for the Unwed Mothers. His dad's identity has never been confirmed. Up until Ted was 3, he lived in the Roxborough area of Philadelphia with his maternal grandparents. The couple raised him as their own child to mitigate the harsh backlash that came from being born out of wedlock during that era. Family members, friends, and even a young Ted thought that he was led to believe that his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was his older sister, which is a little twisted to begin with. But eventually, Bundy did uncover the reality of his family background, although his accounts on how he discovered that changed every time he told it, because he was a gaslighting liar. He said in one account that he recounted to a girlfriend that a cousin revealed his birth certificate after calling him a bastard. I would have called him worse in retrospect, though. He told biographers that he had discovered it on his own. Anne Rule, a biographer and a true crime author, she had a personal acquaintance with Bundy, noted that he did not learn about his true parentage until 1969, when he found his original birth record in Vermont after one of his escapes. Bundy harbored a lasting resentment towards his mom, though, for not revealing who his biological father was, and forcing him to uncover the truth on his own. I got news for you, Bundy. Millions of people don't have their father or either parent in the picture, and they don't go off and murder people. He displayed unsettling behavior in his childhood, too. His aunt, on the maternal side, Julia Cowell, woke up one day. Now, this part is a really famous part of the story. She woke up from a nap with little bitty Ted, 3 years old, standing there smirking at her. But he had surrounded her with kitchen knives in a circle around her, with the pointy ends facing her. Now, this is creepy as hell and would have freaked me out. I don't think I'd have ever went back to my sister's house or been alone with that child ever again. But there's 2 sides to his actual family background. There is one side where his grandfather was like evil and abusive, and there's another side where they were perfect. I'm going to tell both because it always feels like it's somewhere in the middle. They couldn't have been more quintessentially suburban if they tried. The mother worked as a secretary, and Mr. Bundy was a devoted father. Every Sunday, they took him to church, and they were actively involved in various youth organizations like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Brownies, things like that, even sending them to church camps. They were incredibly engaged. They always, let's try that again. They were incredibly engaged parents, but he always felt different and struggled with a significant speech impediment for many years. It made him the target of teasing and bullying from other kids. Even at Boy Scout camp, he found it hard to keep up with the other kids. He couldn't tie the ropes properly. He couldn't hit the mark when they were doing marksmanship. And even when they were racing races, he never won. His temper often got the best of him, and he had a penchant for scaring others. He once constructed a dangerous tiger trap that a little girl fell into. Now, a tiger trap is what I picture as what you see in cartoons where they dig a pit into the ground, cover it up with foliage. But in his, and many that are meant to catch actual tigers, they put sharp sticks facing vertical, and the little girl fell down on one of those sticks and punctured her thigh pretty badly. And that's not good. In 1987, he and his other family members this is the other side of that story, the more bad side that he liked to tell. In 1987, he and other family members informed attorneys that Samuel exhibited tyrannical and bullying behavior, having physically abused both his wife and animals. On at least one occasion, it was reported that Samuel threw Julia, a sibling, down a flight of stairs for oversleeping. Not like she was unconscious or anything. And he occasionally spoke to the unseen. Okay. And once even erupted in violent rage when the topic of Bundy's parentage was mentioned. Bundy characterized his grandmother as a submissive and fearful woman who became increasingly depressed and submissive and reluctant to leave their home in her older years. I'm 44 and I don't want to leave my house either. That's just me. In addition, Lois's sister, Audrey Cowell, stated that their mother could not leave their home because she had a stroke, because she was overweight, not because she was depressed. But in my opinion, if she had a stroke, she was stuck at home, that would cause a human to suffer, especially in a time when mental health was infantile. Recent investigations have raised questions about the portrayal of Bundy's grandparents. Some residents of Roxonborough recall Samuel as a fine man, and they're puzzled about the claims of his violent behavior. The characterization that Sam was a raging alcoholic and an animal abuser was a convenient characterization used to make people justify why Ted was the way he was. And one of Bundy's cousins said from his limited exposure, nothing could be farther from the truth. Even his daughters loved him dearly and had nothing but fond memories of him. In Ted's own words in a Netflix special that I watched or studied a couple of times when preparing for this is a quote from his mouth directly. Everybody's fascinated with the notion that there is a cause and effect, that we can put our finger on it and say, yes, his father beat him when he was a child. We could see it when he was a kid. That's bullshit. There's nothing farther from the truth. That's bullshit. There's nothing in my background which would lead one to believe I was capable of committing murder. Absolutely nothing. Direct quote. So I'm not saying that the grandfather was or wasn't abusive, although Bundy did say it with his own face when he started to sing for everyone to listen to save his own. I was not there, and eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. Anybody who has studied true crime for any amount of time would know, and those who don't, I'm telling you, eyewitness testimony changes because our memory is unreliable. He was a lying, manipulative troll, though. There are spouses being abused all over the world by their partners, who are people that you would look at and think they would never do that. They don't go around sitting with the gang, watching the game, being like, oh yeah, I beat Karen so bad last night. That bitch ain't never gonna give me lip no more. Or whatever. They usually put wounds where they cannot be detected by others. They don't want to get in trouble either. Now, in high school, he yearned to be someone he wasn't, aspiring to become president and determined to prove that he was a force to be reckoned with. However, much of his ego came off as empty bravado, making the insecurities that plagued him, masking the insecurities that plagued him. Quote, some people would see me as a shy and introverted. I didn't go to dances. I didn't go to beer drinking outings. I was pretty, what you might call, a straight, but not in a social outcast kind of way. Even saying that, he's trying to find a happy medium that makes him look not good or not bad. He doesn't want to be the top and doesn't want to be the bottom. In 1950, his mom, Lois, changed her name from Cowell to Nelson. Encouraged by several family members, they relocated from Philadelphia to Tacoma, Washington, to stay with their cousins Alan and Jane Scott. The next year, she encountered Johnny Culpepper Bundy. He was a chef working at a nearby hospital, and they went to an adult singles event that they happened to meet at First Methodist Church in Tacoma. They married later that same year, which is really fast. It is by my standards, maybe it wasn't then. And Johnny officially adopted Ted. Together, Johnny and Lois have 4 kids of their own. But despite Johnny's efforts to involve Ted in family outings like camping trips and stuff, Bundy maintained a sense of emotional distance. He would later express to a girlfriend that Johnny wasn't his real father, he wasn't very bright, and he didn't earn much money. I swear I'd have slapped him for that. Sandy Holt, who lived next to Bundy in Tacoma during his childhood, painted a pretty dark picture of him, calling him a bully and a mean-spirited kid. She recalled that he enjoyed scaring people. He wanted to be the one in control. He seemed to take pleasure in causing pain and fear. Holt also accused Bundy of being cruel to animals, trigger animal violence, sharing a shocking story about him hanging a stray kitty from the clothesline, soaking it in lighter fluid and setting it on fire, which caused the kitty to scream. Of course it did. She claimed that he would take younger kids into the woods to frighten them, saying that he would strip them of their clothes and you would hear their screams echoing for blocks. Why wasn't anyone stopping this? I mean, if you can hear them for blocks, nobody went out to find out why the children are screaming? Their parents? Nobody? I mean, I can just hear the boys will be boys speech now. Then there are the tiger traps you like to set. That major injury wasn't a red flag? Bundy's accounts of his time in Tacoma evolved over the years, as they do when you lie. In interviews, he recounted wandering through his neighborhood and rummaging through trash bins for images of naked women, often the ones that were in detective magazines where they were injured or mangled or essayed. Conversely, when speaking to attorney and author Polly Nelson, at one point he sought out those detective and crime fiction that featured those narratives, especially if they accompanied, especially if they were accompanied by imaging. But then on the flip side to Anne Rule, he said, I never ever read fact checked magazines and expressed disgust at the idea of even doing so. He tried to make himself whoever the person in front of him wanted to be. That's what it was. Um, he also started to share that he would drink heavily and canvass the community like a cop would. So he could watch through the windows of women whose windows had no covering. So he could watch them undress. So he could watch whatever they were doing, no matter what it was. So he started as a peeping Tom. That's really disgusting. Psychologist Anne Carlisle noted that Bundy began to fantasize about women when he had I'm going to get better at this, I promise. He fantasized about the women he saw while he was looking through the windows. And he even, in other situations, started to intimidate politicians' accents that he would see on TV or the radio. He was imagining himself as someone else, someone of significance. Bundy's social life had its difficulties. Could that be because he liked to, torture people? Hmm. I don't like hanging around with people who want to hurt me and torture me. That's not my preference. I don't know about everybody else. I can't speak for nobody else. But he did share with journalists that he preferred to be alone during his teenage years because he struggled to grasp how relationships worked. He mentioned that he didn't really get what it took to make friends, saying that I don't know what make people want to be friends. I don't know what underlay social interactions. However, classmates from Woodrow Wilson High School, where he went to school, said that he was more well known and liked, kind of a medium sized fish in a really big pond. Mainly his hobby was downhill skiing that he liked to do with stolen lift tickets and forged lift tickets and stolen gear. During high school, he got into trouble at least twice for burglary and car theft. But as is normal in most states here in the US, once he turned 18, that was wiped from his record. Bundy graduated high school in 1965 and kicked off his college journey at the University of Puget Sound for a year before he moved to the University of Washington to dive into Chinese studies. In 1967, he got into a relationship with a fellow student, Diane, who goes by several names in Bundy's biographies, Stephanie Brooks being the most popular, but we're going to stick with Diane to make things as simple as possible. He later stated that Diane was the only woman he really loved. By early 1968, Bundy had left the Chinese program at the college and was juggling a few minimum wage jobs. That whole year, he was miserable. He thought that school wasn't good enough for him. It wasn't fancy enough. It was too basic. He deserved better. He volunteered for the Nelson Rockefeller presidential campaign in Seattle and served as a driver and bodyguard for Arthur Fletcher during his campaign for Lieutenant Governor of Washington. After Diane graduated, in the spring of 1968, she moved to San Francisco. Bundy visited her later that year as he snagged a scholarship to study Chinese at Stanford that summer. All of this with him strikes me as weird, okay? He is studying Chinese. Why? That's not a common language here in the United States, so I don't see him needing it. Spanish would make more sense. Not that it's not used at all, but it's not common. It feels like a bullshit way to get closer to college-age women. I bet I know what it was. I bet I know. I bet that he did that because Chinese is the hardest language in the world to learn. So he thought if he learned Chinese, it would make him sound smarter than he was. He couldn't do it. In August of Bundy made his way to the 1968 Republican National Convention in Miami. Not long after, Diane decided to end things and went back to her family in California, thankfully. She was feeling frustrated with Bundy's immaturity and lack of drive because he quit school and was barely working. I wonder why. Lewis later pointed out that this was a major turning point in Bundy's life. Heartbroken from the split, Bundy took a trip to Colorado and even headed further east to visit his family in Arkansas and Philadelphia, even signing up for a semester at Temple University. While he studied, he often found himself in New York City, where he discovered corn, violent corn. He dived into some pretty violent stuff as he dealt with that breakup. In early 1969, Rule thought that that's when Bundy discovered his parentage, right when that breakup was happening. And Bundy returned to Washington and met Liz in 1969 in the middle. And she was a single mother from Ogden, Utah, working as a secretary at the University of Washington School of Medicine. Their intense relationship continued even after his first arrest in Utah in 1976. Bundy became a father figure to her daughter. Her daughter's name was Molly, and she was only 3 when they met. And they were together. He was still in her life until she was 10 years old. She took time to tell her story, which I'm not going to get into. I'm just going to glaze over that part. But as an adult, Molly shared her experiences starting at age 7, detailing how Bundy was abusive, hitting her, purposefully knocking her down. He would put her in risky situations that no child should have to be in, and inappropriate touching disguised as playful accidents, such as playing hide and seek while they were naked. There's more if you would like to look up Molly's story, and you can hear the full part of that. After graduating from the University of Washington in 1972, Bundy got more involved in politics because that's exactly where we need him. And okay, this one blows my mind. He was appointed to the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. He then took a job as an assistant to Ross Davis, the chairman of the Washington State Republican Party, who, of course, praised Bundy as a smart, aggressive, and a believer in the system. System I want no part of. Despite, okay, he did not score high on the LSATs. Now, the LSATs is a placement or entrance exam for law school. But he was still accepted to law school at the University of Puget Sound and the University of Utah in early 1973 because of some recommendations that he got from Evans, Davis, and several of the University of Washington psychology professors. Because he tanked the LSATs, so his merits weren't going to cut it. He had to go back for recommendations. In the summer of 1973, Bundy was in California for Republican Party work and reestablished his connection with Diane. She was taken aback by his growth into a seemingly focused and committed professional. It was an act he was putting on. He was seemingly on the brink of a big political and legal future because he's in law school and working with all these politicians. Meanwhile, he was still dating Liz, and neither woman knew about the other. So he's a cheater, too. Big surprise. Come fall 1973, Bundy enrolled at the University of Puget Sound Law School and continued to woo Diane, who made several trips to Seattle to see him. They even chatted about marriage, and once he referred to her as his fiancée in front of Davis. In January 1974, Bundy suddenly cut off all communication with Diane. This part gets me. Leaving her calls and letters unanswered. Okay, so she's writing him handwritten letters. He's just ignoring them. It's the 1974 equivalence of him ghosting her, basically. And that's not immature in any way, right? When she finally managed to get him on the phone about a month later, she wanted an explanation. Of course she does. And he responded with a cool, detached tone, saying, "Diane, I have no idea what you mean." Gaslighting 101. I don't know much about it myself, but I took a little seminar course so that I could be well educated for you guys. Okay? Well, that was the last she ever heard of him. Probably a good thing. Later, Bundy mentioned that I just wanted to prove to myself that I could have married her, which is disgusting. Diane reflected that most of his intense pursuit in late 1973 seemed like a calculated move, as if he'd been waiting on the right moment to make her fall for him just so he could reject her. Like she rejected him. But that's nothing I like. And me and you both know that. What she did to him was because he was quitting school and not holding a job. What he did to her was all made up. Anyway, so gross. And by that time, Bunny had started skipping law school classes, and by April, he completely stopped attending classes again, coinciding with a string of young women going missing in the Pacific Northwest. It would sound like this is the beginning of his murderous ways, but there's no way to know, since he was a gaslighting, manipulative liar that told multiple stories. But we will get into his first murders now. There's no clear agreement on when or where Bundy started killing women. In my very unprofessional opinion, he spun different tales to various people and kept the details of his earliest crimes under wraps. This could be for so many reasons. It could be because of the ones when he first did. They would reveal his identity because he was messy and left a lot of evidence behind. Or it could be something more simple than that, like his ego or pride because he botched them. Even though he went into graphic detail about many of his later murders before his execution, Bundy mentioned to Nelson that he tried to kidnap someone in Ocean City, New Jersey back in 1969, claiming he didn't actually kill anyone until 1971 in Seattle. He told psychologist Ann Norman that he murdered 2 women in Atlantic City while visiting family in Philadelphia in 1969. Bundy hinted to Detective Robert Keppel about a murder he committed in Seattle in 72 and another one in 73, involving a hitchhiker near Tumwater. But he didn't go any specifics, so that made it kind of sketchy. Both Rule and Keppel suspected he might have started killing even as early as a teenager. But his first confirmed murder that is attributed to Ted Bundy happened in 1974 when he was 27 years old. He claimed he had already honed his skills by then to leave very little forensic evidence behind, especially before DNA profiling was a thing. Here's my thing. How do you hone a skill? By working it and doing it, right? So he couldn't have honed that skill if he hadn't been doing it. That's my thought on that. It's going to get heavier here. Okay, this is where it starts to get heavy. A series of murders has occurred in the western states and Washington and nearby areas. 8 young women have gone missing, and they were all aged between 18 and 21 years old, and 4 of them were college students. Shortly after midnight on January 4th, 1974, just as he was wrapping up his relationship with Diane, Bundy slipped into the basement apartment of 18-year-old Karen Sparks, who was also referred to by multiple aliases in various writings about Bundy. After striking Sparks with a metal rod from her own bed, he sexually assaulted her with the metal rod from her bed frame, injuring her internally all the way through her bladder. She suffered. There's an excerpt here that comes from the True Crime Database. There are multiple quotes by Karen in this, so I'll just go straight to that. She would recall nights later, "He came into my home. He took bed frame off my bed. He smashed my skull, and he probably used the same bed frame and smashed it into my vagina and bladder. My bladder was totally split, said Sparks, who revealed it took nearly 20 hours before her roommate discovered her unconscious and bleeding. Bob thought I was still sleeping. It was horrible for him to find me that way. Time out. That right there gets me in my study every time. This woman is laying on her bed, bleeding out right now. She is bleeding and everything on her has to be hurting. And she's worried about him? That's an amazing human right there. That's an amazing person. Okay, so it was 7 p.m. before her friend came down to check on her, and Bob came down and he saw blood on my pillow and he called 911 right away. I have a horrible ringing in my ear, she said, just constant. Sparks also suffered from epileptic fits, but explained that I overcame those. She remained unconscious for 10 days in a coma. When she awoke, she found her father and her roommate Bob beside the hospital bed with her. And Bob, she asked her dad, "Dad, what happened? What happened?" And all her dad could say back to her was, "You just had a little bump on your head, babe." He tried to keep it as upbeat as possible for her. And she later learned of the horrific circumstances of what happened, but she had no memory of the attack and could not give any clues to investigators about who assaulted her. That's the end of that excerpt. Again, if you want to find that, that's at the True Crime Database. That website's amazing. Okay, shout out to them. They have so many things on there. But from the rest of this comes from the documentary on Netflix. She said, and then I called my mother, and he told my mother, he says, "Oh, Karen must have fallen down the stairs. It's really bad. Sparks said in the show. At the hospital, the extent of her injuries became apparent. The brutal attack had left her with injuries that resulted in permanent brain damage, along with significant loss to her vision and hearing. And then in the early morning of February 1st, Bundy broke into the basement room of 21-year-old Linda Ann Healy, a UW student who provided the morning weather to the skiers in the area, which was vital for where they lived, for their safety. He knocked her out, dressed her in blue jeans and a white blouse. He took her boots, and he left with her. He later admitted to driving Healy to a secluded area where he essayed and murdered her, disposing of her body. In the first half of 1974, there was a disturbing pattern of female college students disappearing, roughly one a month. That's a lot. On March 12th, 19-year-old Donna Manson, a student from Evergreen College in Olympia. Yes, I am reading the thing that I wrote because I do not trust that I can remember these facts back and forth. So, okay. About 60 miles south of Seattle, left her dorm for a jazz concert but never showed up, which sounds like a really relaxing evening. And like she had a really cool vibe. Like we're going for jazz tonight. I've never done that. I don't have that in my area, but I would. And Bundy later confessed to burning her skull in his girlfriend's fireplace, claiming he did it down to the last ash. Due to a mix of paranoia and a desire for cleanliness, this is not an easy feat to accomplish. Even when they are doing a cremation in a crematorium, there are little bone pieces and pieces of teeth left. So that wouldn't have been an easy thing for him to do. Then on April 17th, 18-year-old Susan Rancourt went missing after leaving an evening advisors meeting at Central Washington State College in Ellensburg, which is 110 miles south of Seattle. This guy loves to drive. He loves to get on the road and get out there. Two female students from Central Washington later came forward to say that they encountered a man with a sling asking for help with some books to get books to his car. One of them on the night that Rancourt went, one of them on the night Rancourt disappeared, and the other 3 nights earlier. On May 6th, 22-year-old Roberta Parks stepped out of her dorm room at Oregon State University in Corvallis, which is 260 miles south of Seattle, to grab a coffee with some friends at the Memorial Union. She never made it there. Bundy later claimed he saw her in the cafeteria and convinced her to go to a bar with him. Once he got her in his car, he assaulted her and he killed her. He gagged her. He tied her up. He drove her back to Washington, where he assaulted and killed her. On June 1st, another 22-year-old, Brenda Ball, vanished after leaving the Flame Tavern in Burien. I'm not sure how to say that one. It's Burien. It's close to the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. She was last spotted in the parking lot, chatting with a brown-haired guy who had his arm in a sling. Bundy said he took Ball to his place for consensual before strangling her while she slept. This didn't explain the severe injuries to her skull. Investigators in Seattle and King County were getting increasingly worried. There wasn't much physical evidence, and the missing women didn't have much in common besides that they were young, attractive, college students, white, long hair, parted in the middle. Pretty basic, pretty much. In the early morning of June 11th, 18-year-old Georgianne Hawkins, a student at UW, disappeared while walking through a well-lit alley that connected her boyfriend's dorm to her sorority house. The following day, three homicide detectives, this part's wild. The following day, three homicide detectives were investigating that alley. And Bundy went back. He later confessed he went back. With a forensic expert to search the alley. Let me start that sentence over because I mixed it up. The following day, three homicide detectives from Seattle and a forensic expert searched the alley thoroughly and found no clues. Later, Bundy confessed to luring Hawkins to his car, knocking her out with a crowbar. After handcuffing her, he drove her to Issaquah, a suburb about 20 miles east of Seattle, where he strangled her and spent the night with her remains. The next afternoon, he returned to the UW alley during the major crime scene investigation and managed to find and take her earrings and a shoe from the parking lot while they were there investigating, which is wild to me. Keppel noted that this act was so audacious that it still surprises law enforcement through this day. He claimed he went back to Hawkins' remains 3 times after that. After Hawkins went missing, some witnesses stepped up to say that they saw a guy on crutches with his leg in a cast with a briefcase. He was hanging out in the alley behind the dorm on the night she disappeared. One woman even remembered him asking for help to get his briefcase to the car, which was a light brown Volkswagen Bug. But there were 42,000 Volkswagen Bugs in the area at the time. It was a very popular car. Reports about the violent attack on Sparks and 6 missing women were widely covered in the newspapers and the TV across Washington and Oregon. At that time, Bundy was working in Olympia. He's living a complete double life. He was the assistant director. He was the assistant director for the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. I'll say it again. the assistant director for the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. It gets better. He created a pamphlet aimed at helping women prevent rape. Take that in, because this shocked me. Could there be a more perfect person to make said document except a serial murdering rapist? Who is giving him these jobs? Because after that, he took a job at the Department of Emergency Services, the DES, a state agency that was involved in searching for missing women. I have read that criminals like to sometimes get themselves involved in the investigation. This is ridiculous. It was at the DES that he met Carol Ann Boone, twice divorced mom of two, who would become a significant part of his life about 6 years down the road. Y'all see the boys sleeping on the bed? This one is Neko. And the little white guy back there, that is Sato. He is named after Satoru Gojo. They're sleeping. I'll show you their faces one day. You'll see why. He has bright blue eyes. Anyway, so yeah, this led to a wave of fear, causing a significant drop in young women hitchhiking. Law enforcement faced increasing pressure, but the lack of physical evidence made their job near impossible. They were getting like 200 tips a day, and they have to check out every single one. But it wasn't only that was making it hard. The communication challenges, not only across state agencies, but across state lines themselves. 7 states. Not yet, but it was already starting to cross state lines. They were tight-lipped with reporters to avoid jeopardizing the investigation, which is normal. Notably, all the victims disappeared at night, often near construction sites, and around the testing time for school, like when they have finals or midterms weeks. And if you don't know, that's a time when a lot of kids will drop out of school because the stress and pressure is too much. Y'all, I got mess. Ignore my mess, okay? This is where I work every day, so it builds up right here. My little dog bones and tummy medicine, okay? But let's see. Each victim was last seen in jeans or slacks. And in many crime scenes, reported sightings of a man with a cast or sling, driving a brown or tan Volkswagen Bug. None of those things are distinguishable. Back then, that's very bland. None of that is distinguishable. On July 14th, it's only one of what did I say, 47,000? On July 14th, the tragic events in Washington and Oregon reached a peak when 2 women were abducted in broad daylight from a busy beach in Lake Sammamish Park in Issaquah. 4 women who witnessed the incident described a charming young man dressed in a white tennis outfit, sporting a sling on his left arm, speaking with a slight accent that sounded either Canadian or British. He even used his real name. He introduced himself as Ted. Now, I can't stop picturing this dude with a sling and a white tennis outfit looking utterly ridiculous in hindsight on the beach. That's not what you wear to the beach. Just saying. Listen, he didn't have no bathing suit. He didn't want to show off his body. He didn't have no body from all that lifting. This dude, he's extra, so he's probably trying to look rich or something. But he used his real name. He introduced himself as Ted and asked for help unloading a sailboat from his tan or bronze Volkswagen Bug, because we all carry our sailboats on our Volkswagens, right? While 3 women declined, what dude is going to ask a woman to help unload a boat anyway? I know that's not exactly, whatever, you get it, okay? Anyways, so 3 women were like, nah, bro, I'm good. I ain't even going near that, okay? But there was one woman, 3 women witnessed Ted approach Janice Ann Ott, a 23-year-old probation caseworker with the same stupid sailboat story. They watched her leave the beach with him. About 4 hours later, Denise Naslund, a 19-year-old aspiring computer programmer, stepped away from a picnic to use the bathroom and never came back. Bundy later told investigators that he made one watch the other. Ott was still alive when he returned, and he made one watch the other's assault and murder. Although he recanted this claim right before his execution. King County Police equipped with a detailed description of their suspect, his vehicle. King County Police, equipped with a detailed description of their suspect and his vehicle, distributed flyers all over the Seattle area. A composition sketch was published in the local newspaper, aired on regional television. Liz, Rule, a DS employee, a psychology professor from the University of Washington, all identified the sketch, the car, leading them to report Bundy as a suspect. However, detectives who were, like I said, overrun with so many tips, they doubted that a well-groomed law student who had no prior criminal history would be the culprit. It probably didn't hurt that he was a young white male at this time period. On September 6, two hunters found the skeletal remains of Ott and Naslin near a service road in Issaquah, just 2 miles east of Lake Sammamish State Park. And additionally, a femur and several vertebrae were discovered at the scene, were later confirmed by Bundy to belong to Hawkins. 6 months later, a forestry student from Green River Community College uncovered the skull and mandibles of Healy, Rancourt, Park, and Ball on Taylor Mountain, a location Bundy often revisited. Just east of Issaquah, they found his burial grounds, or not so buried. In August 1974, Bundy was accepted again by the University of Utah Law and relocated to Salt Lake City, leaving Liz behind in Seattle. Although he frequently called her, he was also dating at least a dozen other women. As he went through the first-year law curriculum for the second time, Bundy was crushed to realize that his classmates possessed an intellectual capacity that he lacked. He found the coursework utterly baffling, describing it as a significant disappointment. Or was it just really hard because he wasn't that smart? The following month marked the beginning of a new wave of homicides. Could that be from frustration? Including two women that would remain hidden until Bundy confessed shortly before his execution. On October 18th, Melissa Ann Smith, the 17-year-old daughter of Midvale's police chief, vanished after leaving a pizza restaurant at 9:30 p.m. Her body was discovered in a nearby mountainous region 9 days later. 9 days. The autopsy suggested she might have survived up to 7 days after her disappearance. On October 31st, another 17-year-old, Laura Ann Amy, went missing 25 miles south of Lehi. I guess I'm saying that right. It's Lehi. She was just leaving a Halloween party, the best holiday ever, and it was just after midnight. She was by herself, and she was hitchhiking trying to get home. It was pretty common to do that back in that era. Her body was located by hikers in American Fort Canyon, 9 miles northeast on Thanksgiving Day. A poor baby's family. And the medical examiner determined that Amy had died on November 20th, 20 days after she went missing. So right after this guy loses his burial ground, or whatever he's calling it, he goes on to change his MO. I could be wrong, but it seems like it, because he's holding them for a lot longer here. And both Amy and Smith had suffered severe violence, including beating, rape, sodomy, strangulation with a nylon stocking. Years later, Bundy recounted his post-mortem activities with the bodies of Smith and Amy, which included washing their hair and applying makeup. He was making them look like what he wanted them to look. he was basically killing his girlfriend over and over again. In the late afternoon of November 8th, Bundy approached 18-year-old telephone operator Carol DeRange at Fashion Plaza Mall in Murray, which was less than a mile from the Midville restaurant where Smith was last seen. He introduced himself as Officer Roslin. He was cosplaying as a police officer now. And he told DeRange that someone tried to break into her car and she needed to go to the police station to make a statement. But when she noticed that he was driving the wrong way driving on the wrong road, not going towards the police station, she's like, "Hey dude, we're not going the right way." Well, he immediately abruptly pulls over and tries to handcuff her. But in the scuffle, he handcuffs both handcuffs to the same wrist, allowing DeRange to open the car door and bolt. She got out of there. She lived. She survived. That evening, Deborah Jean Kent, a 17-year-old student from Viewmont High School in Bountiful, vanished after leaving a school theater production to pick up her brother. My personal opinion is this one could have been prevented because he was spotted by the teachers and a few other people just loitering behind the theater. I'm probably wrong, but that's my opinion. That one hits home for me because my youngest child is a theater nerd, so that one hits home for me. But both the drama teacher and a fellow student reported to the police that a stranger had approached them, asking them to come to the parking lot to identify a vehicle. And another student later noticed the same man pacing back and forth to the auditorium, and the drama teacher saw him again just before the play concluded. This suspicious man, they could have called the police right there. That's what I was saying. Investigators discovered a key outside the auditorium that fit the handcuffs DeRange had on. Connections. Bundy later confessed to abducting Kent and keeping her in his apartment for a whole day, claiming she was alive for half of it. This works. In November, Liz contacted King County Police again. After learning about the disappearances of young women in the area in Salt Lake City, Detective Randy from Major Crimes Division conducted a thorough interview with her. He's probably the first one that did take her seriously. She keeps calling, and they put him on the list, but this is the first time that someone sat down and had a thorough interview with her. By this time, Bundy had become a significant suspect in King County, but the witness from Lake Sammamish, deemed most reliable by detectives, did not recognize him in a photo lineup. In December, Liz reached out to the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office to voice her concerns again. Although Bundy's name was added to their list of suspects, there was no substantial forensic evidence linking him to the murders in Utah. He had gotten really good by then about not leaving anything behind. In January 1975, Bundy returned to Seattle after completing his final exams and spent a week with Liz, who chose not to inform him that she had reported him to the police multiple times on 3 separate occasions. How do y'all do 3? 3. She also made plans to visit him in Salt Lake City that August, which was very, very smart of her. That was very smart on her part. 1975, Bundy relocated much of his criminal activities from Utah to Colorado. On January 12th, Karen Eileen Campbell, a 23-year-old registered nurse, vanished while walking through a brightly lit corridor between the elevator and her room at the Wildwood Inn. That's now known as the Wildwood Lodge in Snowmass Village, located 400 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. This guy wants to drive more now. And the coroner's examination revealed that she had suffered fatal head injuries from a blunt object, which left distinct linear grooves in her skull. Additionally, her left earlobe had been cut and her body exhibited severe lacerations from a sharp instrument. On March 15th, a 26-year-old Vail ski instructor named Julie Lyle Cunningham vanished while walking from her apartment to meet a friend for dinner. approximately 100 miles northeast of Snowmass Village. Bundy later recounted to Colorado authorities that he approached Cunningham using crutches, asking for assistance with his ski boots, which led him to overpowering her into his car, where he assaulted her before moving her to a secondary location near Rifle, about 90 miles west of Vail. Several weeks later, he drove 6 hours from Salt Lake City to revisit her remains, where he left them. On April 5th, 25-year-old Denise Lynn Oliverson went missing near the Utah-Colorado border in Grand Junction while riding her bike to her parents' house. Her bike and sandals were discovered beneath a viaduct on a railroad bridge, which is the part that goes like this under the railroad bridges. That's what a viaduct is. I had to look that one up. His claim was corroborated by gas station receipts. He had the receipts. He literally had the receipts that he was in the area on the day she disappeared. On May 6th, Bundy parked outside this is the worst one to me. On May 6th, Bundy parked outside the Alameda Junior High School in Pocatello, in Idaho, about 160 miles north of Salt Lake City, where he spotted 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver. He enticed her into his car, took her to his Holiday Inn hotel room. He assaulted her and ultimately drowned her in the bathtub before disposing of her body in Snake River, north of Pocatello. In his confession, Bundy shared disturbing details about that baby's life. In mid-May of that year, 3 of Bundy's colleagues from Washington State Department of Emergency Services, the DES, including Carol Boone, they traveled to Salt Lake City to visit him, and they stayed in his apartment. Either he's a really good housekeeper or they're blind. Shortly after, in early June, Bundy spent another week in Seattle with Liz. They talked about the possibility of a marriage the following Christmas that trip. Very romantic. Throughout his time, Liz did not mention her numerous conversations with law enforcement, though, in King County and She's talked to Salt Lake County and King County at this point. And Bundy kept his relationships with Boone and some other random law student secret from her. On June 28th, 15-year-old